Thank you, Larry. And good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome to our Talanoa on climate security. We continue our voyage, and it is an honor to moderate this Talanoa of distinguished senior political leaders, sharing their wisdom on how their countries in our region are meeting the climate challenge. We warmly welcome the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Strategic Planning, National Development and Statistics of Fiji, the Honourable Professor Biman Prasad. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Prime Minister. We also warmly welcome the Minister for Home Affairs, Climate Change and the Environment of Tuvalu, Honourable Dr. Maina Talia. We welcome Minister for Foreign Affairs and Immigration of Cook Islands, Honourable Tinika Elikana. Thank you, sir. We welcome Minister of Police for Tonga, the Honourable Paula Piveni Piukala. Thank you, sir. Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Honourable Ministers, thank you so much for your valuable time so we can hear your expert views. The 2025 Pacific Security Outlook Report warns that all global climate indicators, greenhouse gases, temperature, ocean heat and acidification, and sea level rise continue to worsen. Meanwhile, the Pacific continues to face a climate code red. Yet the likelihood of an imminent global resolution to addressing the causes of climate change appears low. As nationalism rises and the multilateral system weakens, this panel session is therefore a critical opportunity for a high-level conversation on how the Pacific can continue to ensure that it remains resilient, secure, peaceful, and prosperous, as the impacts of climate change and disasters likely worsen over time. Our first question to our esteemed speakers: how does climate change impact your country? As senior political leaders, we're keen to learn and understand from you what your country is dealing with. Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, if we could start with you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Secretary General, Honourable Ministers, and the organisers. I wasn't sure whether I was going to make it to the conference, but I'm very pleased to be here with my esteemed colleagues. Well, I think all of us know that climate change is the greatest threat to Fiji and Pacific Islands. Indeed, it is the gravest threat to the well-being and security of our communities. And in many ways, it is also an existential threat to the Pacific. And extending that, it is a fundamental security threat. And as you ask quite rightly, what does it mean to the Pacific countries? To me, it means that if we don't take action now, all development gains over the past 50 years tend to be lost. Based on current trajectories of 2 to 3 degrees Celsius plus of global warming. In fact, all of it could be lost. And so Fiji and the Pacific now see the security and stability primarily through the lens of climate change. All our institutions and all the tools available to us are being deployed in many ways, in one way or the other, to return our countries to a path of security and stability. So, in short, it means that if we do not take action now, and I think we've been talking about this for a while, that the stability, security, and the development gains that we've made over the last 50 years could all be lost. And I'd be happy to add a little bit more on some of the lived realities. I think many of our Pacific advocates, our civil servants, our leaders in the past, they've done a very good job of advocating, of highlighting what it means to the Pacific Island countries. And so there's a lot of that already there. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and that important point about action now. And it resonates with those of us who are here for the panel this morning from our other senior political leaders in terms of action now. And we heard that from the Solomon Islands Foreign Minister, that importance of walking the talk. So we move to Honourable Minister of Tuvalu, Honourable Talia, for your views. Thank you, sir.
First of all, thank you so much, moderator, for that a very profound and constructive question, which indeed I believe that all of us have some thoughts around it. And again, first of all, at the outset, let me acknowledge with great appreciation the invitation from the organizers to be part of this very important dialogue. And of course, my esteemed ministers. Well, I can answer the question in two levels. First, I can speak from the policy lens. And secondly, I can simply tell a story. Simply tell a story as someone who was born and raised in the island and continue to live in the island. I think that's more than reading some of the para from some of our regional declarations. Again, from the Kainakilua Declaration 2029, I think it's important that I quote some of the important para that are relevant to our discussion today. And I quote from para 2. Right now, climate change and disasters are impacting all of our countries. Our seas are rising, our oceans are warming, and extreme events such as cyclones and typhoons, floodings, droughts, and king tides are frequently and more intense, inflicting damage and destruction to our communities and ecosystem and putting the health of our people at risk. All around the world, people are affected by disaster and climate-induced displacement, losing their homes and livelihood, particularly the most vulnerable at our nations. In para 1, we intend to say that we, the leaders of the Pacific Island Forum meeting in Tuvalu, see firsthand the impacts of climate change. And para 9 clearly states the overcome of climate change crisis facing our Pacific nations. We must increase our global solidarity and align our actions with common concerns. Any failure to act will impact not just us, but our children and generations to come. That's part of some of the policies that I want to bring to our attention. But yet, we are here talking to ourselves. We are speaking to our regional partners, countries, neighbors. But I was really struck by the prayers that was made by Tuiloma, Neroni Slate. I think this is the second time I get to see the Honorable Tuiloma. And I recall that during my days as a climate activist, we were in Canberra at the Parliament House. And just before we entered some dialogues with some of the ministers, because I'm a theologian by profession, I was asked to pray. And we were briefed what to say and what not to say. So I had my prayer as a statement with something that nobody can stop me while I was praying. So when Tuiloma was was literally praying. You know, I turned to my secretary and said, "What a beautiful statement." Nobody couldn't stop me because I was praying and I was reading that statement. All those sensitive issues that I was told not to talk about, I prayed for it. So here we are discussing security, peace, and so forth when it comes to climate change. For us, as someone who was born and raised in the island and continue to live in the island, is a threat. And we should have that courage to continue to live in our peaceful countries that God has given us. So there are many ways we can think. For example, when we talk about Tuvalu as a strip of land, the biggest question for us when it comes to climate discussion, how further do we have to move inland in this very small strip of land? Because we are intruding to other people's privacy, we are intruding to other people's land, and land in Tuvalu, you cannot sell and buy land. You're not allowed to do that, it's just too small. So the biggest question for us, how further do we have to move inland? Because we are intruding to other people's privacy. How can we continue to value our cultural values? How long do we have to hold on to our cultural values? Because we are not just simply talking about the security of people. We are talking about the food security, water security, energy dependency, and energy security, and so forth. So there are many, many things that encompass when we talk about security, when we talk about climate change. And again, as I said at the very outset, we are talking to one another. And this is what we have been doing in the past many, many years, talking about the Silver Declaration, which was something that the civil society was highly involved, which I believe, being in those COPs for many, many COPs, this was something that brought our Pacific countries together. During the COP in Paris, which as a result of the Paris Agreement. So there are many things. As my dear friend has pointed out, I would love to add on more if we enter into a more various questions from the floors and of course with our moderator. And I will I'll add more to my response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, and for emphasising the power of prayer and also highlighting the lived reality of the great people of Tuvalu and their security. Sir, you've also touched on another really important point about the importance of this significant Talanoa session in bringing together academia, civil society, policymakers, political leaders, and we really look forward to your further insights. Malapito. Please, if we could move to Honourable Minister Elikana. Thank you, sir.
Kia ora, tawai wolo. Kia ora tātou tākatoi nā daudau nunu e te matuala, ke talapatai nā te matuala no te vai alelei na ka puti mai ai tātou ki loto te wala nei. Kia ora. First of all, just want to acknowledge the people of the Vanua, for which we are holding this conference, and also thanks to the government of Fiji for being a very good host, and also to the organizers of this probably a little bit conference. I don't think it's timely. I think we are a little bit late in convening these conferences. But in terms of climate change and its impact, I've got before me papers that's prepared by my staff, and I know they'll be disappointed with the response because I'm going to speak as a Pukapukan, as a person who lived the impact of climate change. And for me, it's disappointing that we're still talking about the impacts of climate change as though it's just a security issue. We all understand the causes of climate change. We all understand the impact of climate change on our small. In fact, it shouldn't be a security issue now, it should be our very own existence, that what we should be worried about. If we delay taking the appropriate actions now, we'll be talking about our existence. And for me, coming from the small island of Puka Puka and Atoll in the Cook Islands in the northern group, closer to my friend on my right here, I don't think we got the 50 years you're looking at. So it's our existence, our culture, our traditions, our legends, and also our land. So for us, it's a reality. It's not just to talk about security, it's to talk about our very own existence, and the need to take appropriate action is much needed now than leaving it later to other countries to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Elikana, and we really appreciate that significant point that climate change is not just security, it's all things and it's everyone's business, and it very much is about our existence. Malopito. We now move to Honourable Minister Piukala. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Manu, moderator. But before I begin, I would like to set the floor right. First, I'm not a senior political leader, and I'm not a subject matter expert. So if you notice, I'm the only Minister of Police in this. This forum was for foreign affairs ministers and defense. So I'm more of an afterthought, like a legitimate child. In fact, I'm only 5 years old in His Majesty Cabinet as Minister of Police, Minister of Fire and Emergency, and Minister of Public Enterprises. I'm loaded, but the Crown Prince always encouraged me, pick a ship, pick a way for pick a ship. So he relied on my shoulder to muscle those things. We begin and start talking about climate change, climate security, national security, regional security. When asked what is the speed of sound, Einstein turned around and said, I don't carry such information because it's already available in textbook and reports. The value of education is not to learn many facts, but to train the mind to think. So I'll offer to have a different dimensions. But you must have noticed that I'm the only one coughing in these congregations. So my mind is not thinking. So don't expect anything from me. The way I look at this climate change and climate impacts, my first question is that, do we understand? Do we have the full grasp of this cause and effect phenomena? We all experience, we in the Pacific all experience the impact of climate. But we have nothing to do with the climate change. Absolutely nothing. We are an innocent victim of this disaster. In my way of thinking, we are in a helplessness situations, because we see the problem, but we cannot do anything about it. 7 months ago, I was with the COP29, the invitation of IPU. And they first started setting the platform of the impact of climate change, including the Pacific, Pakistan with all heat waves and everything else. And then I expect them to come up with solutions. But instead they're talking about mitigations, climate mitigations. And this is what appeared to my mind. out of 206 countries, the top 40 countries that emit carbon dioxide contribute to 90% of the carbon dioxide emissions. Who is responsible for that? And who should be accountable for that? The top 40 countries. If we put the Pacific at their percentage contribution to carbon dioxide emissions, less than 1%. Tonga is 0.0004. Fiji is 0.004. So if we add our region together, not even close to 1% contribution to carbon emissions, yet we are forced to change our lifestyle, change our policy according to external mindset. And let me say for one example, clear example. Prior to the COP29, our parliament passed a law that no vehicle older than 10 years are allowed to enter our border. When I came back, we were in cabinet, and then I fight against it. I said, our economic vulnerability is more real than our contributions. The reason why our policy was formed that way, because we were indoctrinated that we are responsible for the climate change. Because of that, they say, don't cook your lovo, don't burn your rubbish, don't drive old cars. Why? Because it's emit carbon dioxide. Make us feel responsible for something that we are not responsible. But we changed the way we are living. This morning first time I heard about Ocean of Peace in this conference. I found that concept, had we discussed mechanism and implementation of that concept, that take away the security element. It's two sides of the same coin, but it's more proactive with the concept of ocean of peace than regional security. Regional security, we started with this. I'm defending my territory. But ocean of peace, we're starting with this. Handshake. So the dimension that we need, for me personally, I think that we are yet to understand the whole phenomena of climate change. For us to put a strategy to counter, be it adaptation, be it loss and damage, we need to have some clarity on, on this global concept. One of the things that I try to dig deep to understand as to why we are contributing so little. This is one thing that I noticed and I learned. The blue carbon, the blue economy, decompose carbon dioxide 4 times faster than the normal photosynthesis process. Because the only scientific proven method or methodology of decomposing carbon dioxide is through the plant-based photosynthesis process. As a byproduct of the food process of the plant, they decompose carbon dioxide and emit oxygen. So when I was at the COP29, I expected to see academia, scientists with research to give us artificial photosynthesis, something that will help decompose the trap of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere that caused the global warming. And this is what the data is telling us. During that COP29, they disclosed to us that the world have invested $1.8 trillion on renewable energy on 2023 alone. 1.5 in 2022. So in the last 4 years, they talk about 6 trillion million investment on renewable energy. But you know what amazed me? That we failed to read the indicators. It was also declared during the COP29, the hottest year was 2024, the hottest day. My question that come after that, what is the correlations of our solutions to our problem? It seems that there is no correlations. What we're doing basically do not solve the problem that we're facing. I'll pass it on. I'm taking too long. But there's something food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Piukala, for that food for thought, and also for that strong reminder that as we journey in understanding and tackling the impacts of climate change, that we stay together in that work. Also, the important point that you've raised that was highlighted by the Honourable Prime Minister of Niue this morning, that we are negligible contributors to the impacts of climate change. So how do we work together with others, given that climate change is everyone's business, to ensure that we can tackle this together? We look forward to your further insights, Honourable Minister. Distinguished participants, now that our panel have wonderfully laid the scene on these impacts of climate change from their respective esteemed countries and also for the region and the globe, we move to a more specific question. Let's dive deeper. And one of the big issues, as highlighted by Honourable Minister of Tonga, relates to climate financing and the loss and damage agenda. Deputy Prime Minister, Honourable Prasad, would love to hear you tell us about that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Ministers, for your comments. I think the Honourable Minister from Tonga quite rightly pointed out that the Pacific, by and large, is not responsible for what's happening to them. And in that context, I think the world is failing the Pacific states on climate finance. And I think hopefully failing. Unlike many other regions, the Pacific countries have a very narrow window to adapt to climate change. And I think the important point that I want to make is that we can adapt now. We can adapt our economies over the next decade, probably. You know, some might, such as Tuvalu and Kiribati, maybe would need even more immediate response. And if you move this adaptation program interventions beyond, in my view, a decade, it will be just too late. It will be just too late for many of the Pacific countries. And the adaptation window is closing fastest on the Pacific Islands. Some more than the others, but it is closing the fastest on us. So that is why we need a massive increase in climate finance flowing to the Pacific over this decade. The Honourable Minister for Policing also talked about COP29. My friend and I, we were all there. And we know that the new collective codified finance goal was agreed. There is a target. What needs to happen is that we need to get on with mobilizing funds at speed and with scale. Because we only know too well that for many communities and many regions across the Pacific, adaptation windows have already closed. It's too late for some of them. And these communities simply need to be relocated. And in my view, justly and more humanly. The other point that I want to make is that loss and damage is without question the essential, what I call third pillar of the climate financing framework. We all are very pleased with the establishment of the loss and damage fund, and in my view, that was a very significant step forward in terms of a maturing global response to the whole climate crisis. Unfortunately, this new fund continues to struggle. And it continues to struggle to secure a long-term financing commitment from developed countries. That is what we are seeing now. And therefore, it is absolutely vital for us, as part of our advocacy, that our larger development partners, the leaders of many of the large countries, and in the context of what the Honorable Minister was saying about why the Pacific needs this urgent attention in terms of climate finance, because anything we build now in the Pacific, Minister talked about health, talk about roads, bridges, schools, agriculture, all this infrastructure will have to be climate resilient. In Fiji, we are already talking about building to respond to Category 5 cyclones. We had that in 2022. And so the Pacific Island countries neither have the fiscal space, nor the resources, nor the revenue base to respond to not only the loss and damage that has already occurred, but also to adapt to the existing climate emergencies, climate disasters, climate-related disasters. And so, very important subject. And that is why I think the Pacific, we as the Minister said, I think the argument, the scientific argument, I like your point about, okay, we need innovation, we need new technology, we need to look at ways, and the Pacific, in many ways, is doing its part in terms of mitigation because we do. Fiji, for example, we produce about 50% of our energy that in the country through renewable sources, and we want to take this to 80-90% in the next decade or so. So that part is happening. But I think in terms of loss and damage, in terms of adaptation, in terms of responding to the climate emergency, without climate finance, without accelerating the availability of climate finance through a number of different climate funds, including the loss and damage fund, we don't have time, as I said earlier. Many of the countries don't have more than a decade. And the more we delay it, the more difficult it becomes for us to look at. So climate finance, I think, in terms of climate security, I think climate security is an important point. Security and stability of the Pacific in general. And I think this is a very timely conference in many ways to translate all these issues that we've been talking about in terms of real security for the Pacific, ocean peace that our Prime Minister's talked about. All this will fit into that framework of achieving a Pacific region which is peaceful, stable, which is secure, and in the context of the quality of life for our people. So yes, climate finance, and we should talk more about it. And we should relate this to the security, stability, and the quality of life of our people in the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, for those important insights and the strong messaging about continuing to act now, adapt now, noting that if we don't, we'll lose all those development gains, as you highlighted earlier, sir, that we need massive increase in climate financing, and you said, sir, at speed and at scale, including from the Loss and Damage Fund. And we do recognize, like you said, sir, that there's contracting climate financing and the importance of continuing to message to our partners the significant importance of having that assistance to our Pacific countries. You also mentioned, sir, about climate migration, and so that's an important segue for our next question to Honourable Talia from Tuvalu. Some countries are already contemplating migration pathways, such as Tuvalu, as one way of managing climate change. So would love to hear from you, sir, if you could kindly share your views on this. And we did hear in the first panel, the Honourable Minister of Papua New Guinea highlighted climate refugees when he gave his intervention earlier. Thank you, Honourable Minister.
No, thank you so much, moderator. And of course, what has been said by the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister was really shed additional light to the next question, which is about the migration. But again, let me just make some few observations in regards to the climate finance, in which is something that we all anticipate. And of course, in terms of climate finance, is something that the Pacific countries have done so much, especially when it comes to the Loss and Damage Fund. It's something that we have been pushed for the past decades. And of course, it has been operationalized. But again, you know, the funds are still yet to come through. But again, I acknowledge the work that has been done by those who have moved on from the climate space. And again, accessibility of climate finance for us, especially for Tuvalu or small lying atolls, is a big challenge for us. And I cannot understand why we have to come and talk about our fate to get money to address the issue of climate finance in Tuvalu. You know, there is no point of talking about adaptation without real finance. So there is no point of us coming together to address security, climate security, and so forth, when there are no commitments in terms of finance. I think it's about time we should have the courage to say no, take your money, too many strings attached to, many red tapes. It's about time we should have the courage to say no, take your money. If they don't cooperate with us, or they don't want to come to our agenda, then we have to stand strong. We have to make some strong, bold discussion around these issues. But when it comes to migration, of course, it's a hot topic for us. Not really a hot topic, but it's because migration for us is a definite no. But it's a matter of choice for our people. Our role as government, we facilitate pathways for our people. We want to ensure that our people, when they are shows the pathway migration pathway to go to any other parts of the Pacific or any other parts of the world, they are safe. The security is always there. So for example, in 2019, we had a discussion with the civil society back in the islands, and we were surprised to read the outcome statement from all the civil societies in Tuvalu and, of course, with island communities. And let me read some of the what has been declared in their report. And the title of the report is Toku Whenua Toku Tofi, literally means my island, my inheritance. Report on climate-induced displacement. And let me read a portion of the report which is relevant to our discussion. We recognize in relation to the impacts of climate change that climate change-induced displacement will negatively transform our society as a whole, and fear the loss of our ancestral lands will force us into extinction, and therefore affirm with one voice that migration from our ancestral lands, territories, in the name of climate change shall not take place without exploring all possible alternate avenues for climate change adaptation. So this can be the very last resort. And I believe there are a lot of questions about the Falepili. Of course, there is an element in the Falepili Treaty, a union treaty with the government of Australia and the people of Australia that talks about climate cooperation. And again, it's a pathway. It's an option for people who wish to travel to Australia and job opportunities and so forth. But again, the role of the government is to facilitate a pathway that is safe for our people, because we don't want to end up a second-class citizen in another country. And nobody in this room wants to end up as a second-class citizen for something that our contribution, to add on to what the Minister from Tonga has said, our contribution to climate change is almost next to nothing. It's 0.00001. And yet we suffer at the expense of the other, at the luxury of the other. So it's very unfair. But all we can do is to bring the moral clarity of this issue to the forefront. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, and that was so well said in terms of our land, our people, our heritage, and we don't want to move. And your important points about being Pacific-led, ensuring that our solutions are Pacific grounded, Pacific-owned. And it reminds us of the important point also said by the Honourable Prime Minister of Niue this morning, that our people lead. We also heard from His Royal Highness this morning that we lead in our Pacific way. We lead in our way. So thank you very much, sir, for those important points. We recognize that we have panel members that may wish to add to this. Deputy Prime Minister, thank you, sir.
I just wanted to say, I think the Honourable Minister is right. No community wants to relocate, but I think the fact of the matter is that people are leaving, and are leaving for all kinds of reasons, for loss of coastal livelihoods through land loss, through impact of disasters. So they move not just to another country, but within the country. So a lot of the rural urban drift or shift into the urban centers is invariably related to what happens with respect to the impact of climate change, saltwater intrusion, loss of land, loss of livelihood. And so the probability that people have that they will get a better life in the urban areas allows them to move. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to make a broader point here about migration, relocation, travel within the region, including those with Australia and New Zealand, and I've talked about this in the past. I think it's time for the Pacific to look very, very seriously for a much more deeper, meaningful regional integration. And when we talk about a much more deeper, meaningful regional integration, we ought to talk about how people can travel, whether it's a visa-free travel, whether it's travel for business, whether it's for harmonizing investment rules, whether it's to look at how the Pacific can benefit from each other. I think it's a very, very important issue, and one that I think many of the Pacific Island countries support, but we don't seem to have we didn't seem to be making a lot of gains that we should be making in the area of regional integration, migration, labor mobility. I think there are a lot of innovations that are already happening, but again, we need to think about migration, relocation, movement of people within the region, within the country, in a much more holistic manner, and also in a much more planned and in a manner that is understood not only by people like us and those who make policy, but also ordinary people in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and we appreciate you bringing that important point to this discussion in the context of the movement of our people in a holistic and transparent manner. Minaka Vakalevu. I'm going to check on our honorable panelists if there was anything else they wished to add on the subject of migration. Otherwise, I'll move to the next question. Thank you.
Just on the issue, I think this is one of the areas that we, the forum, can actually take a lead on in terms of addressing short labor market shortages in our respective countries. I think it's something that I've spoken with my friend here. First time we met about visa-free in the Pacific. I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed, which could lead on to the minister from Solomons. We've already discussed that area also in terms of addressing labor mobility within the Pacific. I think it's probably one of the things that seriously need to be addressed to address the labor shortages in our market, and something I'm keen to look at. Okay.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, and we appreciate again that reiteration of the point on movement of people and opportunity to address labour shortage.
I think.
Thank you, sir.
The relocation and migration is a very important context. If we are speaking of the Pacific regionalisms and ocean of peace moving forward, then we have to factor that in. I think the event last week with the installation of the Tuilau have rekindled the deeper roots and cultural connectivity between Laos and Tonga. But ever since the introduction of Western colonizations, we start to identify us in a limited boundary. Well, having said that, I can't really say negative about it. I'll say that is a dimension that we have to come through. We have now enlightened and civilized. It is an opportune time now to rethink of our Pacific democratic concept, because it appears that we need to rethink, we need to re-engineer how we are structured. The rest of the world have already moved the directions. Even Africa have already moved an African nation of union from learning from European Union and stuff like that. I think Mr. Biman articulated to it of having to revisit our free flow of movement. Now with labor mobility, we have, the Australian and New Zealand have taken our youth for fruit picking and left a lot whole of vacuum of labor force. So we start getting Fijian. And then they have trouble with visa and everything else. So what I'm saying that we need to rethink the strategy that we are approaching to this rather than acting in piecemeal, in silos. And even for me, this is the first time, this is the first time I meet all of you. But if we are to cultivate a culture or environment or ocean of peace, there is an element of trust, confidence with each other. So I don't know whether that's a role of the Island Forum to be more proactive on that rather than annual event, especially the leaders. If we are to discuss our way forward in terms of Pacific response and Pacific security, we need to cultivate, to understand each other in that sense, in that dimensions. See, with me, I never, politics was never an option for me. I was a technician, I was a computer scientist. I developed system software. I do software engineers. But I end up in this politics, very new dimensions. In my first 2 years in Parliament, I was suspended 20 odd times from Parliament because I am not a politician. I want to see reasons in every basis of any decision making. And I want to see that sound advice from technical people are appreciated by politicians. And I used to state it in Parliament, do not mix politics with technicalities. Let the technicals, people determine technical issues, not politicians. So I see in our whole edge for a united collective front. I remember during the COP29, when we left, there were a commotion with the negotiator trying to see what financing that they wanted. But I posed this question to the IPU. Who should be responsible for the loss and damage? Who should be accountable for all this? Who should be donating financing? And what is the role of UNFCCC in terms of administering that? Because the way I see it, there should be a United Nations Charter standard or some to hold pick a country. Because this is the whole dimension. The whole dimension is the carbon emissions and the global warming. It's primarily due to them, rich country, banning fossil fuel in pursuit of their wealth and their wealthy. By doing so, they indirectly affected us. So, in my way of thinking, there should be some percentage of their surplus, of their wealth, set aside by UNFCCC, primarily for this climate loss and damage compensations. That's how I see it. But how are we going to do that? How are we going to implement it? Where are we as a region? Should we speak in one voice or should we speak on all individual voice? So all those kind of things we need to rethink because this is a global issue, global phenomena. We need to look at it from the global perspective and see what's our roles and our function in this whole architecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. And we appreciate that reminder about the important and distinguished ceremony that happened last week of the installation of the Tuilau, and that deep connection that our peoples have across the Pacific, and the opportunity to draw on that Pacific heritage and our Pacific roots to navigate our waka. We also appreciate the point that you've made alongside your esteemed honourable ministers, and as said this morning, on not acting in silos, that we must act together to tackle these challenges. An important point that you also raised relates to trust and confidence, and perhaps the forum has a role to play there. And that point is a great segue to the next question that we have for Honourable Elikana. Honourable Elikana, you mentioned earlier that perhaps the forum also has a role to play in terms of labour shortages and labour mobility. And sir, what else would you like the Pacific Islands Forum and its members doing next on climate change? How would you like to see climate change reflected in the Ocean of Peace concept? Malo.
Thank you, moderator. I think it's important for all of us to realize that united we stand, divided we fall. And that we also need to sing from the same song sheet. Our collective and united voice will carry more weight than our individual fragmented voices. So in terms of climate change, it's time for us to come together as a unified voice in advancing the issue of climate change and our responses to it. But not only within ourselves, the same standard should also be with our development partners who wish to engage with us in finding the solutions. There shouldn't be any compromise in what we want. In terms when we're dealing with our partners, you can see the frustrations as articulated by my friend here from Tonga and also from the panel here, frustrations that we are more or less the impact of somebody else's work. And we need to be collective and unified in advancing our views on that front. In terms of the Ocean of Peace concept, I understand that's still in its infant stage, and as we work around the mechanisms for it, but the same should apply. There should be no departures from a unified voice. I think for us in the Pacific, we have a toolkit that we've already worked on. We got so many strategies, so many conventions, so many declarations, but we haven't seen the result of those. I think the time has come. It's high time now that we get together and implement those to advance. For us in the Cook Islands, we got a Marae Moana concept. We pushed ahead with it to declare our EEZ as a Marae Moana for us, and also at the recent COP, we've announced our Raui, Tora Raui, which is our whale sanctuary pathway for whales through our EEZ. And those are actions we take individually, but I think collectively, if everybody in the room thinks alike, then to declare the whole region in those areas, and something that we should all aspire to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, for those important insights, and doubling down on the importance of working together, having a united voice, especially as we approach our development partners through the Pacific Islands Forum and other platforms, knowing what we want and not compromising on that. Thank you, sir. The next question, please, is for Honourable Bukala. The Pacific Climate Security Assessment Guide states that climate change poses significant risks for individual, community, national and regional stability in the Pacific, and that social discord, political instability, and violent conflict are all possible. Where do you think the biggest security risks are, and what can be done about them? Thank you, sir.
The biggest security risk in terms of climate change. I think we are all vulnerable. The risk is, the biggest risk is the fact that we cannot do anything about climate change. We are an innocent victim. So, what can we do about it? Nothing. But to be resilient with all these effects, that's where the Pacific Way element should come in. And if I may elaborate on some event that happened recently, with the volcanic eruptions and tsunami, some people say it's natural disaster. Some people say it's climate change impact. But whatever it may be, it's kind of part and parcel of the threats that we're gonna anticipate in the future. But this is one Pacific Way that I found it very ideal at this very moment. There were a few islands that got affected badly. And His Majesty offered a whole piece of estate of his to this whole community of Mango. Relocate and government to build house for them. That's the kind of resilience in the sense that we are acting in the concept of, am I your bigger brothers? The fact that Tuvalu is also under threat. Our bigger Pacific brothers, the idea of neighborhood. I happened to visit China as my first visit to China ever since I finished education. I had that thinking that China is a poor country and very primitive in terms of civilizations. But one thing of their culture that I picked it and I found it very, very Pacific. We went to visit a village and they saw me from a house, something that catches my eyes. They call it neighbor's gate. Neighbor's gate. And their elaboration is that neighbor's gate is not open, but it only open when there is a disaster in the neighbor. Why I found it very interesting? Because they already anticipate help your neighbor. Something that is very Pacific. Something that deep down into our values, culture. So, we need, and I believe, like I said again, the event in Laos have really brought us to our sense that there were a neighbor's gate in how we live in our Pacific way. But ever since the colonizations and the Western philosophy of governance have shut all that, and we become limited in identity rather than regional identity. So something that we need, for me, something that we need to think together of how are we going to address these climate change consequences, which we have nothing to do. We cannot, even with the amount of, with the mitigation of renewable energy. I may agree with the renewable energy as energy security, but not mitigations of climate change. We add or contribute very insignificant. So the idea of having that for energy security may have some merit, but I don't see any merit when we say do this renewable energy because of climate change issue. Stop older cars than 10 years because of climate change issue. Don't burn your rubbish. Don't cook your lovo. So it's all a mindset that we need to rethink. The way we think, the way we address it, we need to learn and unlearn and relearn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. You're correct. It may seem helpless, and we are quite vulnerable, that we are innocent victims. We did not contribute to these impacts of climate change. Global ambition is not on track to deliver a 1.5-degree world. Climate finance is contracting, and some large states are starting to renege on their NDCs. But as you've also highlighted, and as stated this morning by our honourable leaders and by all honourable ministers today, our Pacific people are a strong and resilient people. We are innovators, we hold our culture dear, and we form solutions when we work together. That's how we're successful, as you've all highlighted. Now, last year saw the largest case for a legal opinion initiated by our region, initiated by our USP law students, for the International Court of Justice to provide an advisory opinion on climate change and state responsibility. It is the largest case before the ICJ in its history, with over 100 submissions from across the globe. The legal opinion is to be handed down next week on 23 July. Our esteemed panelists, we would love to hear your views on this. One, what are you hoping to come out of this legal opinion? And two, how do you think this opinion might address the urgency and security threats posed by climate change to our region? Malo.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Just before I answer that, in terms of cooperation, I think given our interrelated needs and shared exposure to climate extremes, and the question was, what does the forum, or what can the forum do? I think the setting up of the Pacific Resilience Fund by the leaders of the forum is an important step to drive that kind of cooperation and understanding, and also something that would be owned by the Pacific Island countries. I would actually go a bit further and argue that the next step to the PRF really should be under consideration is the establishment of a Pacific Development Bank, something that can be supported by our development partners, but driven and owned by Pacific Island countries to build resilience, build adaptation features that can support the overall objective And earlier on, you posed the question about what are some of the impacts. As we know, it's multifaceted. It's driven by what communities want. So all that could be supported by that kind of cooperation that we can establish amongst ourselves. And I think the PRF establishment of the Pacific Resilience Fund is an important step towards that cooperation. Now, on the ICJ, the legal case, I think it's part of the overall advocacy. It's part of the overall attempt by countries that bear the brunt of the impact of climate change to send out a clear message, as I said earlier, to our development partners, to leaders of the large countries, who probably are not as well aware and perhaps ignorant about the climate emergency faced by countries in the Pacific. And as I said earlier, we don't have much time. If we do not address the adaptation measures, the adaptation needs of the Pacific countries in the next decade, for many of them it will be too late. And that is why I think our focus really should be on the speed, the scale of climate finance, the establishment of loss and damage fund, the new collective quantified goal set up by, or target set up by the leaders at COP29. These are positive developments, but I think the advocacy and any legal opinion on the issue would add to that commitment, would add to that urgency and the need for countries to act. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and we appreciate those points, including the possibility of establishing a Pacific Development Bank and the importance of the advisory opinion adding to our cause. Thank you very much. Honorable Dalia, thank you.
No, thank you so much. I think as we anticipate the outcome of the ICJAO in the next week, despite there is no legal binding attached to it, but I think it's really set the basis of our work. It really brings us together as a community. It really set the tone of our work in the future. So I applaud the initiative led by our law student and of course by Vanuatu and all of the Pacific countries who happens to be there. And we are very much looking forward for the outcome of the ICJAO. And again, we have heard a lot about our vulnerability. And for us in the Pacific, vulnerability does not mean that we are weak. Vulnerability really tells a story of strong people. People will continue to live in their homeland, and people who not just vulnerable, but come out with many different solutions to their vulnerability. So vulnerability does not tack on the sense of being weak, but vulnerability is a sense of being strong. So to conclude, we are not just anticipating the outcome, but we are doing as much as possible to address the issue of security, address the issue of many issues that we are facing in Tuvalu, because climate change falls disproportionately in different countries. We cannot compare the situation in Tuvalu with Fiji, because we don't have mountains to move on. And people here are so fortunate in where mountains are. They have higher ground to move to. For low-lying atolls, it's a different story altogether. So since climate change falls disproportionately, we have to come collectively with different approaches in order for us to address the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And only in the interest of time, we will move to our next Honourable Minister, Elikana. Thank you.
Thank you. I think come back to the point that I made earlier on in terms of regional solidarity and our primary aid institution, the PIF. I think this would have been a role that's our primary institute should have taken. But I'm thankful to the people of Vanuatu, the government of Vanuatu, taking the lead, because we've been talking here all day about the impact on climate change on our countries. And it should be something that we need, as I said, to have a collective and unified voice. I think it would have had more weight. But fortunately, we were given the opportunities for each individual countries to make submissions to the ICJ, and the Cook Islands has definitely made its views known. But as we await the outcome, I think most importantly, we hope that it will articulate clearly the responsibilities of those who causes the harm to the environment, and they should be held accountable. I think that's one of the things that I hope that will come out of the judgment, and also to state the responsibility in terms of holding them, as my friend from Tonga has alluded to, those who are principal emitters of pollution into the air to be held responsible accordingly. I just hope that's the loss and damage mechanisms that's been introduced is not a backdoor escape for them to say where they contribute to the loss and damage to avoid their responsibility in terms of their contribution to climate change impacts. And yeah, we await the outcome with interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Honourable Piukala, thank you.
I think the decision that we are waiting for is far bigger than the outcome or result of the World War II. The outcome and result of World War II is the survival of civilizations. These decisions, it's a really what we're waiting for, the survival of accountability and responsibility. We are all in this together. We are only one boat, one world. If the people that we perceive to see the law and order charter the pathway forward, then the pour around and against our wishes, then it's, to me, it's a direct attack on the concept that really bind and guided every nations: accountability, good governance, responsibility. That's how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. And with you, we all recognise the leadership of the great government of Vanuatu, alongside all of our leaders and all of your hardworking officials in taking this important matter before the ICJ, alongside the rest of the world. So like our honourable ministers have said, we anticipate this advisory opinion with much interest and also much hope. The key takeaway messages from this esteemed panel, and we really thank you for those important insights and views, is one, we continue to act. We act now. Two, that we stay together. It's the only way. As has been highlighted, we're all in this together. And three, notwithstanding all challenges, that our Pacific people have faced for centuries, long before the establishment of the SDGs, we are still here. We are still working together, navigating our waka. Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists for their important contribution to our discussion.